million years ago, the Grand Canyon caverns were formed, and they've been seeing tour groups since the 60s.
What if everything we thought we knew about American history was missing a massive piece, buried in the depths of the Grand Canyon?
So today we're taking you to the Grand Canyon, kind of. We're actually going 210 feet underground.
According to an old newspaper and a handful of persistent voices, ancient Egyptian relics, Buddhist statues, and a lost underground city were once discovered by an explorer named G.E. Kincaid. But then the Smithsonian stepped in and the story disappeared. Is it just an old hoax, or did someone cover up a secret too big for the history books? The man who found a city in the rocks. The story begins not with a temple or a tomb, but with a man rowing a wooden boat through the sheer cliffs and twisting waters of the Colorado River. His name was G.E. Kincaid, an explorer and amateur archaeologist who reportedly made a discovery that would challenge everything the world knew about human history. In 1909, an article appeared in the Arizona Gazette detailing Kincaid's incredible tale. According to the report, he had spotted strange discolorations on the canyon wall nearly 2,000 feet above the riverbed. Drawn by curiosity and the kind of daring only solo explorers seem to possess, he scaled the cliff and stumbled upon something almost too wild to believe. The entrance was narrow and led to a tunnel system that stretched deep into the rock. Kincaid described chambers lined with what he called Oriental and Egyptian-style artifacts. There were statues that resembled Buddha, shields made of unknown alloys, copper tools, and golden urns covered in unfamiliar markings. Even more shocking were the hieroglyphs etched along the walls, resembling Egyptian script, but with notable differences. And then there were the mummies, entire preserved bodies placed inside niches, as if in ceremonial rest. If Kincaid's account was accurate, then this wasn't just a small find. It was the remnants of an entire civilization, potentially large enough to support 50,000 people, hidden beneath the layers of rock in Arizona. He claimed there were separate quarters, dining halls, storage areas, even a space for metalworking. But despite the grand scale and implications, Kincaid's discovery would never be publicly verified. In fact, after that article, he vanished from history almost as quickly as he had appeared. The article suggested that the Smithsonian Institution had taken part in the investigation. A certain Professor S.A. Jordan was supposedly involved in the excavation and study of the site. But over time, things began to shift. There were no follow-ups, no photos, no artifacts ever emerged for public viewing. And when journalists and independent researchers asked the Smithsonian for records or verification, the response was unequivocal. No such expedition ever happened, no Kincaid was on their payroll, and no professor named S.A. Jordan had ever existed. This denial only deepened the mystery. Why would a prestigious institution like the Smithsonian deny something so specific and seemingly documented? If it was a hoax, why bother remembering it? And if it wasn't, then what happened to the evidence? Those questions would echo through time, fueling whispers of a cover-up. Some claimed that the government had restricted access to the region to keep people away. Others noted that a stretch of the Grand Canyon near the supposed cave site had been labeled a forbidden zone, a term that feels more like a plotline from an adventure film than official park policy. Still, this particular part of the canyon has been off-limits for decades, with restrictions justified by environmental protection concerns and the sacred nature of the land for several Native American tribes. And yet, the curiosity never died. In fact, it grew stronger. Podcasts, conspiracy forums, and even popular YouTube channels have resurrected the tale time and again, each time sparking a wave of debate over whether the entire thing was a brilliant newspaper stunt or a real discovery buried beneath layers of stone and silence. Adding to the intrigue is the fact that so many early explorers, including John Wesley Powell himself, gave names to features in the Grand Canyon based on Egyptian, Hindu, and Greek mythology. Towers named after Isis, Shiva, and Osiris dot the landscape. Some claim these weren't random choices. They suggest that the explorers were already aware of some deeper connection, perhaps something hinted at in oral traditions or local legends, and the names were clues left behind for future generations to decipher. Even if that's just poetic thinking, there's no denying that the canyon inspires big ideas. Its sheer size, with over 1,000 known caves and only a handful ever officially explored, creates the perfect setting for a story like this to live forever. And in that environment of endless possibility, it's not hard to believe that something was found and buried before the public could ever know. The Smithsonian denial and the Forbidden Zone. If the Grand Canyon truly held the remnants of an ancient civilization, the logical next question is simple: why hasn't anyone seen it? The heart of this mystery doesn't rest solely on what G.E. Kincaid claimed to have found, but rather on what happened after he made his discovery. Because the moment his story hit the Arizona Gazette, it was met with silence. And that silence only grew louder when the Smithsonian Institution, the very organization allegedly involved, denied everything. According to their official statements, they had no record of any such cave, no files about ancient artifacts in the Grand Canyon, and no documentation on either Kincaid or Professor S.A. Jordan. This total blackout sparked a firestorm of suspicion. Could the Smithsonian, one of the most respected historical and scientific institutions in the United States, really be complicit in hiding an archaeological discovery of this scale? To those inclined to question official narratives, the denial was not reassuring. It was too absolute, too definitive, and in the world of conspiracies, a firm denial often feels like a confirmation that something is being hidden. Further complicating matters is the location of Kincaid's alleged find. The article places the entrance somewhere near the confluence of the Colorado and Little Colorado rivers, a region now classified as highly restricted by federal and tribal authorities. Officially, these restrictions exist to protect sacred indigenous land and fragile ecosystems. But for decades, that explanation hasn't satisfied everyone. The term Forbidden Zone keeps appearing in alternative history circles, and the very idea that part of one of America's most iconic national parks is completely off-limits has only fueled deeper speculation. Visitors to the Grand Canyon are often surprised to learn just how much of it remains inaccessible. While millions of people visit each year, most stick to a few trails and scenic overlooks. The majority of the canyon's interior, especially its network of caves, is still largely unexplored. Over 1,000 caves have been documented, but fewer than 200 have been officially surveyed or entered. That leaves a massive chunk of territory full of unknowns, and for conspiracy theorists, that's fertile ground for imagination. The idea that one of those caves might contain ancient statues, golden urns, or an underground city is the kind of narrative that refuses to die. Adding to the mystery are recurring reports of unusual sightings in the restricted zones. Over the years, hikers and river rafters have claimed to spot ventilation shafts carved into the cliffs, metal doors embedded in the rock, and even the occasional unmarked helicopter flying low through the canyon. While none of these reports have ever been verified with photographs or hard evidence, they form a patchwork of folklore that surrounds the Kincaid story. Every strange noise, every sealed-off trail, and every government warning sign adds another layer to the legend. Critics argue that it's all coincidence or misinterpretation. After all, ventilation shafts could simply be part of older mining operations. Helicopters fly through national parks for all sorts of reasons, from rescue missions to routine patrols. And the doors in the rock, possibly entrances to historical storage sites or service facilities maintained by the National Park Service. But even with logical explanations available, the myth endures, because the canyon is simply too vast, too mysterious, and too powerful a symbol to ignore. What makes the Kincaid legend even more compelling is that it fits into a larger pattern of supposed ancient anomalies. Around the world, there are dozens of unsolved mysteries involving underground cities, impossible architecture, or civilizations with lost knowledge. From Derinkuyu in Turkey to the caves of Cappadocia to the step pyramids in Central America, stories of hidden pasts are everywhere. The Grand Canyon, with its dramatic geography and spiritual history, naturally becomes the American version of that global phenomenon. People want to believe that there's more to the story, that history books only scratch the surface. But if the Smithsonian did suppress evidence, what would their motivation be? Some suggest it's about academic control. If an ancient transoceanic civilization were proven to have reached the Americas before Columbus, before the Vikings, it would upend centuries of accepted history. That would mean reprinting textbooks, rewriting timelines, and reconsidering everything from anthropology to archaeology. Others say it's more practical. Perhaps the government feared that the discovery of valuable metals and priceless relics would attract treasure hunters, leading to environmental damage and cultural disrespect. Then there's the theory that the artifacts found by Kincaid didn't fit any known category. Some claim the relics weren't just Egyptian or Hindu-inspired, they were something else entirely. Tools made from unknown metals, symbols that didn't match any language on Earth, even technology that couldn't be explained. And in that version of the story, the Smithsonian didn't hide history. They hid something far more dangerous, the idea that we might not be alone, or that humanity's timeline includes chapters that mainstream science cannot explain. Still, all we really have is one article from 1909 and a series of passionate arguments on both sides. No photographs, no recovered items, no official excavation report. And yet, the absence of evidence does not equal the absence of interest. People continue to search, not just for artifacts, but for answers. The Grand Canyon remains a place of mystery, and the Kincaid tale has transformed into something larger than one man's report. It has become a symbol for every buried truth, every hidden chapter, and every time we were told, "That's impossible." And that leads to an even more compelling question. What exactly were those hieroglyphs Kincaid described? Were they decorative carvings, historical records, or something far stranger? The hieroglyphs that shouldn't exist. When G.E. Kincaid first stepped into that mysterious cavern, the detail that stunned him most wasn't the golden urns or the weapons. It wasn't even the statues with unfamiliar features or the tunnels that twisted into darkness. It was the writing on the walls. Lining the narrow passageways carved into the sandstone were rows of strange symbols. At a glance, they resembled Egyptian hieroglyphs. But the longer he studied them, the more uncertain he became. They were not quite Egyptian, not quite anything he had seen before. It was like a forgotten language from a world lost to time, and that detail is what truly elevated this story from an interesting rumor to a full-blown historical puzzle. Many who heard the account latched onto the idea of the hieroglyphs. If these markings could be found and deciphered, they might reveal the origins of the people who built the cavern. They might even rewrite the known history of human migration. Kincaid's descriptions, though sparse, mentioned symbols of the sun and moon, animals not native to North America, and what he called depictions of bird men and serpent gods. That choice of words lit up the imaginations of fringe historians and spiritual theorists alike. Some saw connections to the ancient mythologies of Egypt and India. Others pointed out similarities to Mesoamerican art, especially when it came to the stylized animal figures and ornate headdresses. But scholars found themselves in a tight spot. They could neither verify nor completely dismiss what Kincaid claimed, because no copies or photographs of the hieroglyphs ever surfaced. The Smithsonian said they had nothing. The Arizona Gazette article made no effort to include sketches, and Kincaid himself, according to historical records, disappeared from the public eye after the publication. With so few artifacts to examine, academics naturally lean towards skepticism. Without a reliable source, they argued, the symbols could have been misinterpreted, imagined, or deliberately fabricated. Yet believers in the story pushed forward. Over the years, many tried to link Kincaid's hieroglyphs with existing ancient scripts. Some compared them to the undeciphered symbols of the Indus Valley civilization. Others pointed to the Rongo Rongo script from Easter Island, arguing that global civilizations may have shared common knowledge far earlier than previously believed. A few even proposed that the symbols had an extraterrestrial origin, echoing the same theories applied to other mysterious sites around the world. The fact that these carvings were never rediscovered only deepened the intrigue. Were they hidden on purpose? Were they destroyed? Or worse, were they never real in the first place? What makes the situation more complicated is how similar sounding stories pop up in other parts of the world. Caves with symbols, tunnels that appear too advanced for their time, legends of ancient visitors who brought knowledge and then vanished. The Grand Canyon may not be unique in its folklore, but it does offer a striking backdrop that feels almost too cinematic to ignore. Standing on its rim, it's easy to believe that something important could be hiding down there, something we were never meant to find. The mystery of the symbols gained another twist in the 1970s, when a few independent researchers claimed to have discovered cave entrances matching Kincaid's vague descriptions. They submitted photographs of rocky outcroppings, stair-like formations, and even what appeared to be carved faces in the cliff walls. None of these photos, however, offered definitive proof of man-made structures. Experts called them natural formations shaped by erosion and time. But to those convinced of the original story, the photos were signs that the truth was just out of reach, always one step further into the shadows. Still, the theory that hieroglyphs once existed in a canyon cave refuses to die. Over the last 2 decades, modern scanning technology has been proposed as a way to investigate the hidden caves of the Grand Canyon without disturbing them. LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, and even drones have been suggested as tools for uncovering the secrets within the rock. But those tools have yet to be deployed in any meaningful way. Government restrictions, tribal sovereignty, and environmental regulations make exploration nearly impossible. It's not that no one is curious, it's that access is denied. And maybe that's what keeps the story alive. If the site were accessible, people would have explored it thoroughly by now. But because it's walled off, shielded by red tape and geography, it remains suspended between possibility and imagination. The symbols may still be there. They may still be telling a story we're not ready to hear. One theory suggests that the symbols were deliberately erased, that sometime in the early 20th century, before the site was sealed, a quiet cleanup operation took place. Workers, perhaps under the direction of a private agency or the government, went in and removed everything of value. The hieroglyphs were chiseled out or covered up, the artifacts were boxed and transported, and the cave was closed, literally and figuratively, from public knowledge. While that theory has no proof either, it reflects a broader unease with how historical narratives are managed. When the official story feels too neat, too clean, people start to look for what was left out. In the end, whether the symbols were Egyptian, Hindu, Native American, or something entirely unknown, they represent a broader desire to connect the dots between civilizations. To believe that ancient cultures may have been far more connected, advanced, and adventurous than we give them credit for. The mystery of the hieroglyphs is not just about what Kincaid saw on the walls, it's about what he might have been trying to say. That the past is far stranger, more complicated, and more interconnected than we dare to imagine. But if there's one detail that always stops researchers in their tracks, it's not the writing. It's what Kincaid claimed came after the hieroglyphs, an enormous statue, unlike anything else ever found in North America. The statue that shouldn't exist. When G.E. Kincaid described the cavern's interior, there was one detail that stood out more than the rest. Amid the tunnels and chambers, he claimed to have seen a towering statue positioned at the far end of the largest hall. It was, according to him, unlike any known artifact in North America. The figure bore the resemblance of an Eastern deity, possibly Buddhist, with arms crossed in solemn repose and eyes that seemed to gaze beyond time itself. If this statue existed, it would not only be wildly out of place geographically, but it would also suggest a level of craftsmanship and cultural transmission no current theory of pre-Columbian contact supports. Skeptics have long dismissed this claim as either a fabrication or a misidentification of a naturally formed structure. But believers see it as the smoking gun, the piece that ties the legend to something bigger. A statue of that scale and design would require significant knowledge of stone carving, transportation, and religious iconography. If it had roots in Asia, it could suggest direct contact between the ancient East and early peoples of the Americas. That kind of connection challenges every established historical timeline. Of course, no photograph of the statue exists, and Kincaid's own description offers only vague dimensions. Still, the idea has sparked endless debate. Some theorists propose that the statue could be linked to lost civilizations, while others believe it was an artistic creation of a forgotten native group with broader influences than previously thought. And then there are those who point to a completely different explanation, that the statue was not of this world at all. Could it have been evidence of something even more mysterious? A relic from an age before recorded history? A message left by visitors from somewhere beyond our understanding? These are the questions that linger, not because they offer easy answers, but because they keep the story alive. And maybe that is the real power of Kincaid's tale, not whether it happened exactly as written, but that it still makes us wonder what secrets the Grand Canyon may still be hiding. Legends like this don't die because they are proven or disproven. They survive because deep down we want to believe the world still holds secrets worth discovering. If you're drawn to stories that blur the line between history and mystery, make sure to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think is hiding in the Grand Canyon?